The laughter around the dinner table felt sharp, like glass shattering inside Emma's chest. Margaret's voice cut through it, calm yet cruel, as she lifted her wine glass. Some people marry up just to feel important. The words hung heavy in the air. Edward smirked, Daniel froze, and Emma's smile trembled before disappearing entirely. She wanted to leave, but pride held her still. Every fork clink, every whisper, every sideways glance reminded her she wasn't one of them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But as she caught her reflection in the silver serving dish, something shifted behind her eye. She wouldn't beg for belonging again. Let them laugh. One day, the same mouths that mocked her would speak her name with awe. The rain fell heavy that night, smearing city lights into streaks across the car window. Daniel tried to speak, but Emma stared out silently, her reflection cold and unreadable. "You know she didn't mean it," he muttered, "but she did." Every word, every look. Emma's mind replayed the dinner like a cruel film reel. She had begged for their approval without even realizing it. Never again. In that quiet drive home, something inside her rewired. The pain sharpened into clarity. Love wasn't supposed to come with conditions, and family wasn't something you earned. It was something you built. The next morning, the house was quiet except for the soft clatter of dishes. Emma stood by the sink, staring at her wedding ring as sunlight spilled across the counter. The events of last night played in her mind like distant thunder. She'd given everything. Her love, her patience, her respect. And still, she was invisible. Daniel walked in, hesitant, holding 2 cups of coffee like peace offerings. "They'll come around," he said softly. She didn't answer. Instead, she wiped her hands, turned to him, and smiled faintly. "No," she whispered. "I'll come around. Just not the way they expect." Later that week, Emma found herself in the McCarthy family office again. Daniel had forgotten a document. She stood in the grand lobby, staring at the company's name engraved in polished brass. McCarthy Holdings. The receptionist barely looked at her. Upstairs, she could hear Margaret's commanding voice in a meeting. Every sound reminded Emma of her place, on the outside, looking in. She felt small for only a moment, before an idea, wild and fragile, began to bloom. What if she didn't need to belong to their empire? What if she built her own? That night, Emma sat by the window, her laptop open, the cursor blinking over an empty page titled Business Plan. Draft 1. Outside, the city pulsed with light and ambition. Inside, Daniel slept, unaware of the storm rising beside him. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Fear whispered, "You can't!" But something stronger answered, "Watch me." The echo of Margaret's voice, the mocking laughter, the condescension, no longer hurt. It fueled her. Somewhere between exhaustion and resolve, Emma Carter stopped being their disappointment. She started becoming their reckoning. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Emma sat in a tiny co-working space, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the smell of burnt coffee thick in the air. Her business plan sat half-written, her confidence cracked. Each rejection email hit like a stone to the chest. Too small, too inexperienced, too risky. She whispered the words under her breath, mocking the tone of the bankers who didn't see her fire. Her phone buzzed. Daniel again, asking if she'd eaten. She didn't answer. Hunger was irrelevant now. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was building proof. By the second month, her savings were nearly gone. The printer jammed, her coffee spilled, and an investor ghosted her mid-meeting. Yet somehow, Emma kept showing up. Every failure carved her sharper. "You'll see," she muttered to herself, wiping ink off her hands. Her reflection in the dark computer monitor looked like someone she barely recognized. Eyes fierce, posture unbroken. Somewhere between exhaustion and obsession, she found rhythm. If pain was the price of building something real, she'd pay it tenfold. On a Tuesday morning, Olivia Hart walked in like sunlight through fog. "You're Emma Carter," she said, grinning. "I've heard the whispers. You're the woman who won't quit." Emma blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Olivia wasn't like the others. She didn't look at Emma like a risk. She looked at her like an ally. Within minutes, they were sketching ideas across notepads, their energy electric. Two women in a world that doubted them, building something unstoppable. Weeks blurred into months. Emma and Olivia worked out of cafes, shared takeout at midnight, and pitched to anyone who'd listen. There were tears, breakdowns, and moments when Emma thought of giving up. But every time, Olivia's voice echoed. "Were you not quitting on something that hasn't even started?" Slowly, their project, Eterna Designs, began to take shape. What once was a dream became blueprints, sketches, and calls from curious investors. Emma wasn't chasing survival anymore. She was chasing destiny. The night the first client signed, Emma cried quietly in the elevator. Not because of joy, but because, for the first time, she wasn't afraid. The building lights flickered against the glass walls as she whispered, "It's beginning." She didn't know it yet, but this small victory would ripple outward, changing everything. Above her, the city hummed like it was listening, and somewhere across town, in a boardroom filled with pride and arrogance, the McCarthys had no idea their world had just shifted. 6 months later, Emma stood before a wall of glass in her new office. The skyline stretched endlessly, and for once she wasn't looking up at it. She was level with it. Eterna Designs had grown faster than anyone imagined. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, investors lining up for meetings she never thought she'd get. But success wasn't loud for Emma. It was quiet, precise, and deliberate. "They said I'd never belong," she whispered to her reflection. Now she belonged to something bigger, something she built with her own hands. Olivia burst into the office, laughter spilling out before the door even closed. "You're not going to believe this," she said, waving a contract in her hand. Emma looked up, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. A real one. Their latest client wasn't just another deal. It was McCarthy Interiors, a subsidiary of her in-law's empire. For a moment, the world tilted. Olivia saw the flicker in her eyes. "You okay?" she asked. Emma nodded slowly. "More than okay." The universe had a strange way of sending invitations, sometimes through contracts. Emma stared at the contract. The McCarthy logo shimmered in gold at the top of the page, taunting her. It felt surreal. Her company, born in a cramped co-working space, was now being courted by the very people who once told her she'd never be one of them. Her fingers hovered above the pen. She could almost hear Margaret's voice. "You'll never be family." Emma smiled faintly. She didn't want to be family anymore. She wanted to be their boss. That evening, Emma sat alone in the darkened office, the city glowing beneath her. The contract was signed. She should have felt triumphant. But instead, her chest was tight. Power didn't erase pain. It illuminated it. She wondered how Daniel would react when he learned. Would he see pride or betrayal in her success? Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. The world felt on the brink of something. Emma exhaled, steadying herself. Tomorrow she'd step into the empire that once rejected her, and she'd do it on her own terms. The next morning came with storm clouds. As Emma stepped into the grand lobby of McCarthy Interiors, every sound seemed to echo louder than it should. She'd been here before, as Daniel's quiet shadow. Today, she returned as the company's partner. The receptionist smiled nervously, offering her a visitor badge. "Actually," Emma said softly, handing it back, "you won't be needing that." The look on the woman's face was priceless. Emma smiled. Power didn't need to shout. It only needed to arrive. The first rumor came through a late-night email. Olivia skimmed the report, eyes widening. McCarthy Holdings. They're in trouble. Emma looked up slowly from her laptop. Trouble? Olivia nodded. Massive debt. Stocks tanking. Silence filled the room, thick and electric. Emma's heart pounded. Not from joy, but something deeper. Fate wasn't subtle. It was poetic. The empire that had humiliated her was crumbling. What do we do? Olivia whispered. Emma's lips curved. We buy. By morning, Emma's desk was buried under financial reports. Each document told the same story. McCarthy Holdings was bleeding money. She read each page slowly, the way you might study a wound. Their arrogance had made them blind. She could buy the company outright if she moved fast enough. Olivia watched from across the room, uncertain. Are you sure you want to do this? Emma paused, then whispered, They told me I'd never be part of their family. Maybe it's time I become their legacy. Or we should score. The next day, Emma walked into a private meeting with a discreet investment group. Every face at the table was curious, cautious, and intrigued. Her proposal, to buy McCarthy Holdings quietly through a shell firm, was bold, even ruthless. She didn't blink once. You're certain? One man asked. Emma's lips curved into the smallest smile. Completely. It wasn't revenge. It was justice wearing a business suit. The deal was set in motion before dawn. Emma and Olivia watched as the numbers flickered across their monitors. Transfers, acquisitions, silent agreements. We did it. Olivia breathed. Emma didn't move. Her eyes followed the loading bar on the screen until it turned green. Transaction complete. For the first time, the McCarthy empire wasn't theirs anymore. It was hers. A storm cracked outside, thunder rolling through the city like applause. When the final papers arrived, Emma took them in silence. She traced her name across the dotted line. Emma Carter, CEO. Somewhere, Margaret and Edward were still asleep, unaware that the world had shifted beneath them. She closed the folder gently, a calm breath escaping her lips. For years, she'd been the outsider. Now they would wake to find she owned everything they built. And she wouldn't need to say a word. The boardroom buzzed with confusion. The McCarthys had been called to an emergency meeting by new ownership, yet no one knew who that was. Margaret tapped her manicured nails against the table, annoyance flickering behind her flawless smile. Edward checked his watch impatiently. Whoever this new owner is, he muttered, I'd better know what they're doing. The door opened softly. He fell silent. Emma stepped inside, calm, poised, and unshakable. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Margaret's jaw clenched. You? Emma smiled. Good morning, employees. Emma, Edward said slowly, voice measured but trembling with fury. This isn't funny. Margaret's hand gripped his arm, her face pale. Emma walked to the head of the table, heels echoing on the marble floor, and placed her folder in front of them. I assure you, she said softly, it's not a joke. The paperwork's been finalized. McCarthy Holdings is now a division of Eterna Designs. The silence that followed felt like thunder without sound. Margaret's breath hitched. Edward leaned forward, his voice cracking. You can't be serious. Emma met his gaze. I've never been more serious in my life. Margaret's composure cracked first. You think this makes you one of us? She snapped, her voice trembling. Emma tilted her head slightly. No, she said. It makes you one of mine. Edward's eyes darkened, his pride bleeding through silence. Daniel entered then, having rushed from another office, confusion shadowing his face. Emma, what's going on? He looked from her to his parents, then back to her. The room seemed to hold its breath. You bought us, he whispered. Emma's gaze softened. No, Daniel. I bought my freedom. The air thickened with silence. Daniel's voice broke it first. Lau, trembling, but steady. All this time, you made her feel small, he said, turning to his parents. Margaret flinched. Edward's jaw tightened, his silence sharp as glass. She built something without us, Daniel continued. While we sat in rooms like this, pretending power made us better people. Emma looked at him, her heart softening. Her heart softened. For the first time, Daniel wasn't torn between love and loyalty. He was standing with her. Margaret whispered, "You've humiliated this family." Emma stepped forward. "No," she said gently. "I've redefined it." Emma gathered her papers, her movements calm and deliberate. "I won't fire you," she said softly. "You'll keep your titles, if you choose to stay. But understand this. The culture of fear ends today." Her voice didn't waver. It carried a quiet authority that silenced the room. Margaret's lips parted, but no sound came. Edward turned away, his reflection fractured in the polished glass wall. Daniel reached for Emma's hand, not in apology, but in admiration. She didn't look back as she walked to the door. "For years you said I'd never be family," she said, pausing just before leaving. "You were right. I became something bigger." The following morning, the McCarthy mansion felt smaller somehow. Margaret sat at the breakfast table, her teacup trembling slightly. Edward stared at the newspaper headline, "Eterna Designs acquires McCarthy Holdings." The words burned like ash. For the first time, silence filled the space that once held judgment and pride. Daniel walked in quietly, his eyes tired but calm. "You did this to yourselves," he said, voice low. Margaret looked up sharply. "She humiliated us." Daniel shook his head. "No, she showed us what grace looks like." Emma stood by the window of her penthouse, watching the clouds shift over the skyline. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since the boardroom. The power she'd gained didn't bring peace, only clarity. She wasn't angry anymore. She was free. Her phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "They're not taking it well, but they're listening." Emma smiled faintly. Maybe that was all it took, for them to finally listen. For her to finally stop explaining. Sure her to finally stop explaining. Margaret showed up at Emma's office unannounced. For the first time, she didn't arrive with perfume and pride, just silence. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said quietly. "I came to understand." Emma looked at her across the room, the air thick with everything unsaid. "You don't have to understand me," Emma replied softly. "Just respect me." Margaret nodded, eyes glassy. "I should have done that from the start." For a brief second, both women seemed human. Not rivals, not enemies. Just two women shaped by pain. Edward came later that evening, still wearing his armor of pride. "You've proven your point," he said coldly. Emma didn't flinch. "It was never about proving anything," she replied. "It was about balance." He stood there, unsure for the first time in years, realizing the empire he built now stood because of the woman he tried to break. "You sound like one of us," he muttered. Emma smiled gently. "No, Edward, I sound like someone who survived you." That night, Daniel found Emma sitting on the balcony, the city glittering beneath them. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat beside her. "You've changed everything," he said finally. Emma turned to him, smiling softly. "Maybe I just reminded everyone who I was." He reached for her hand, fingers intertwining. "You reminded me too." For the first time, there were no sides, no silence, just understanding. The war was over. What came next was peace. A week later, Emma hosted her first company-wide meeting as CEO. The McCarthys arrived quietly, unsure of their place in the empire they once ruled. As Emma took the stage, the room hushed. "This company was built on pride," she began, her voice clear and steady, "but it will thrive on respect." Her gaze found Margaret and Edward in the crowd, not with bitterness but understanding. "No family," she continued softly, should ever make someone feel unworthy of belonging. For the first time, applause didn't come from power. It came from unity. After the meeting, Margaret approached Emma slowly. There was no arrogance this time, only quiet sincerity. "You gave us a place when we didn't deserve one," she said softly. Emma's eyes softened. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better." Margaret hesitated, then reached out, her hand trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Emma didn't hesitate. She took her hand. In that moment, forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was freedom, wrapped in grace. Later that evening, Edward joined Daniel on the terrace of their family home. "I never thought I'd say this," he began quietly, "but she saved us." Daniel nodded, staring out at the darkening horizon. "She didn't want revenge, Dad. She wanted peace." Edward's eyes glistened as he exhaled, the weight of years dissolving in the cool night air. "Then maybe," he murmured, "she's the best of us after all." For the first time, father and son shared silence that didn't divide, it healed. That weekend, Emma and Daniel invited Margaret and Edward for dinner, not at a mansion, not in an office, but in Emma's own apartment. The space felt different this time. Laughter soft instead of sharp, conversation kind instead of cautious. For the first time, they ate together without pretense. Margaret complimented the food. Edward raised his glass to Emma. "To new beginnings," he said. Emma smiled. "To family," she replied. And this time the word didn't hurt. It felt whole. Weeks later, as spring settled over the city, Emma stood on her balcony again, no longer watching the skyline as an outsider, but as someone who belonged to it. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, their silence peaceful. "You ever think about how it all started?" he asked softly. Emma smiled, eyes on the horizon. "Every day, but I wouldn't change a thing." Below them, the city moved on, unaware that one woman's strength had rewritten what family meant forever.